Hello, this is Al Judge. Welcome to another lesson from my book, From Photos to Art with Photoshop. In this lesson, we're going to be discussing gradient fill layers and layer blend modes. Start off with the gradient fill layer. If we come down to the bottom of the layers panel, we have a small toolbar across the bottom here. And there's a bunch of icons. This first icon allows us to link several layers together. The next one allows us to access special effects. The third is to add a layer mask. The fourth is the one we're interested in. This is to create fill layers. The fifth is to create a new group of layers. We're not going to address that subject in this book. The next one is to add a new layer. We've done that before in some of the other videos, and it's just a way of duplicating or adding a new layer. And the last icon is the trash can, where we can drag a layer to delete it. So I want to come back here to the middle one. This icon is to create new fill or adjustment layers. So I'm going to click on that. On this pop-up menu, the first three items are fill layers. We can have a solid fill, a gradient fill, or a pattern. The rest of this menu is all adjustment layers, which we'll be talking about in another chapter in another video. So right now, we've done some solid fill layers in some other videos. I will just touch on pattern real quick because we're not going to use it in the book, but you may as well see it. So I'm going to do a pattern. Over here I get to pick what the pattern is. You can use this as a background. You can fade it out if you like. You can do a number of things with it. A lot of times it's just to add texture to something. Now in that case, we have a couple others that are a little better for texture. This is sort of like sandpaper here. And that's kind of a bubble effect. And another sort of cloth, linen cloth kind of an effect. You can use these to add texture to a layer. So I'm just going to cancel that. We're going to get away from the patterns. I'm going to delete this by dragging it to the trash can. So now I'm going to come back up in here again to create a new layer. And this time a gradient layer. When the gradient fill window comes up, this area is telling us what the gradient is. And the gradient is going from black to transparent. Right now it looks like black to white because we have a white background. And I'll close that after we create this layer so that you can see that. Now we're going to come back and we're going to talk about these adjustments later. But first we're going to just work with this area of what the different gradients are. So I'm just going to create this layer so I can show you what I was talking about of going from black to transparent. If I turn off the visibility of the background layer, you can see it's black to transparent. A gradual transition. I'm going to turn this back on, and we're going to go back. We're going to double click in this gradient area. And this is the details of the gradient. You can click on this down arrow, and you can see swatches for standard gradient preset, and you can choose any one of these. Normally I don't use that arrow. Instead I click right here in the middle. The reason for this is you still get all the swatches, the preset swatches, but you can adjust your gradient down here. For this demonstration I'm going to use the blue, yellow, blue swatch. It'll say blue, yellow, blue right there, identifying it. This gradient characteristics bar matches the gradient that's on our document going from top to bottom, and this is top to bottom. What we have here is the ability to adjust this some, and if you watch over here as I move things, you'll see the gradient change. And the first thing is I'm going to come in. These icons along the bottom are called color stops. If I click on one, you'll see a diamond comes up between the one I clicked on and the next one. That diamond is a color midpoint. It's the balance point between this color and this color, the blue and the yellow. Now, the same thing is true over here. If I click on this one, you'll see the balance point is here, a little diamond. Okay, if I click on this yellow color stop, it's going to tell me that it's yellow and that it's 50% between the two extremes. If I click on a blue color stop, it's going to tell me it's 90%. And if I go to the other end, it's going to tell me it's 10%. It's located 10% of the way from the left to the right, and this one was 90% from left to right. I can fine-tune these if I want. I can move this one in, and you'll see now I'm at 80%, and you see a corresponding change up here. I can also move this midpoint so that the transition happens in a slightly different way. I can move it closer to the yellow, and when I release, you'll see a difference. And what I'm seeing right now at location is that 16% of the distance between the yellow and the blue. I'm going to release, and you see the change here. Likewise, if I come in here and I move this one in, you'll see a similar change. And now we have a very narrow yellow, very gradual, small transition here, and primarily blue at both ends. Right now I'm just going to move these color stops back, and there's 50%. Similarly over here. Go to 50%. So it's now back to the original position. Oh, except for this. This is at 80%. I can move it to 90. And that's my original position. Okay, I could also change this to 100%. And you'll see a difference in the top and the bottom in this case. I'm going to move this back to 90%. So right now we have a blue at 10%, yellow at 50%, blue at 90%. I'm going to say OK here for a moment. Close that out. I'm going to come down here and change my foreground and background color. I'm going to change the foreground to a red and the background to a green. So now I have a foreground and a background color that's different than the blue, yellow, blue. And I'm going to go back in here. And I'm going to open that up. And now if I click anywhere in here, I can create another color stop just by clicking. So I'm going to do that. I go to the color. Actually, it already picked it up and it used the foreground color. And now I'm going to click over here. I'm going to click here between these two. And I'm going to use the background color. So now I have 5 colors in transition. And again, I can move them anywhere I want and change the appearance. I'm going to do all kinds of things with this. Okay, and there's no limit to how many color stops I can add. And this is the latest one I added. And I can just double click here, pick a color, and it gets added to the gradient. I can come in here, click another color, and it gets added. So I can create a very colorful pattern. Say OK for this for now. You see we got lots of colors, quite a bit of variation in how they're located along this bar. Incidentally, you can use the whole stretch. We We didn't in this case, but you can spread these things out differently if you like. And I'm going to do that. Yeah, spread them out a little more evenly. Okay, I'm going to say okay now. So we have a real colorful effect here. Now, if we go back to the gradient fill window, we're going to talk about these other items here. The first one is we have a drop-down menu. This is called Style. What we've been working with is linear. Now I'm going to go to radial. You can see it's a group of concentric circles filling that area. I can angle it, another interesting pattern. I can do reflected. Now reflected, basically the top is a mirror reflection of the bottom. We have double pattern. I come in here. We'll see we have the same number of stops we had before, but because it's reflected, it's a more complex situation, going from the middle to the top and the middle to the bottom. Now we can do diamond. It's an interesting effect. In addition to these different styles, for any one of them, we can change the angle and get a different effect. Now, even with radial, you get changes when you change the angle. I'm going to go to the diamond again. Another thing you can do is you can reverse. So we're going to hit reverse here, and you'll see quite a bit of change there as a result. Okay, we can also change the size, so it has a different effect on our background. Okay, so that basically covers gradient fill layers. As with adjustment layers and so many other layers, there is also a layer mask here. And I'm going to invert that. I can take my white paintbrush and paint on this gradient. And as I do, you'll see the gradient start to come up. I can use this to refine how much of it's visible. Now I'm going to dispose of this gradient fill layer that we created, and I'm going to create a different set of layers. You come up here again to gradient. This time I'm going to choose the black and white and say OK. Now I'm going to copy that twice. Once and twice. So now I'm going to turn off all the layers so we can look at them one at a time. The bottom layer, the gradient fill layer, is our standard black and white. Next layer is the standard black and white. Next layer is standard black and white. But I'm going to come in now and change these. So this is black at the bottom, white at the top. I'm going to reverse it. So it's now black at the top, white at the bottom. And I'm going to reverse this. I'm going to change this one also. I'm going to make it radial. So now if we look, we have a radial. I'm going to change the title. Radial, black and white. Turn that off. This is black and white reversed. Turn that off. And this is the standard black and white. Okay, so now we have the three different layers. And if I change the visibility here, as I do, in each case you'll see what's on this particular layer. So if I turn this one back on, that's what you'll see because it's concealing what's underneath of it. If I go to radial, you'll see that because it's concealing what's under. We have another capability here. I'm going to leave the bottom gradient as it is. It is in the normal blend mode. This is the default for blend modes up here. A normal blend mode means it just remains the way it was originally created. Now I'm going to go to the black and white reversed, and I'm going to change this blend mode to lighten. And now it is blending, these two layers are blending together, but because the blend mode on this one was changed, it gives a totally different appearance. I can do overlay, that's different. I'm just going to choose a few of these so you can see how much they vary. You get all kinds of interesting combinations here as you do this. There are rules for how layers blend together and what each one of these items means, but that's beyond the scope of what we want to talk about in this book. I just wanted to make you aware that this exists and that you can get some very interesting effects with it. This one right now is on difference. I'm going to set this mode at lighten. And now we're going to add this third layer. And because right now it's a normal blend mode, that's all you're seeing. But I'm going to change this blend mode also. I'm going to make it overlay. And when I do, you see quite a different combination. Now the other thing I can do is I can change the order of these layers. So if I drag this radial one down between the first two, you'll see a totally different effect here. We can also change it again by changing the blend mode on the reverse gradient. And I'm going to just pick one at random. So you can see that there's a lot you can do. You can get all kinds of interesting patterns to use as background. And you can change your blend modes to give even more interesting effects. And you can use multiple gradients to combine them using blend modes. And another thing you can do here is you can use your opacity. So this top layer right now is the black and white gradient reversed, and the blend mode is different. And I'm going to just bring that down. And as I do, you'll see that pattern changing quite a bit. Now, for any of these, we could change to colors. Let's change these. Change that color stop to the foreground color. Say OK. Change this color stop to that color. OK. And add a new color stop here that will make yellow and create some very interesting backgrounds that transition from one color to another over some distance. We can have multiple colors, we can have multiple combinations, we can do all kinds of interesting things. This is one of those things where you can just go in there and start playing around as I've shown you here and just try different things, and you will learn more about gradients as you do that. I hope this gives you a good overview of what gradient fill layers are all about. Before we leave this lesson, I want to show you one more thing. We're going to come here on the background layer, and I'm going to click on the gradient tool, and I'm going to select the foreground to transparent gradient, and I'm going to change my foreground background to the default. So this gradient is black to transparent. And I'm going to drag it from this edge and I'm going to drag it from that edge. I get an effect that is reminiscent of a curvature. And this is often used on objects in Photoshop to give them the appearance of a circular item. Like, for example, if you have the image of a coffee mug and you're trying to add an image to it, you can often bring a gradient around the side to give it a more natural, rounded appearance. So you'll see this done from time to time, but I thought I'd just show you this because it will come up as you work with Photoshop in special situations. I think we've covered everything we need to with gradients and blend modes. So I hope this video has been of help to you and that you understand these things pretty well now, and maybe even go in and play with them some and create all kinds of interesting patterns and gradients. So I'll see you in the next lesson. We'll be moving on to layers and really getting into the meat of the capability of Photoshop. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.